Thank you for joining, everyone. My name is Chris Beluso, and I'm here today to introduce the highlights of Libraesva Email Security 5.0. We recently released the latest version of Libraesva Email Security, in which we focused on visibility and new ways to share different types of threats and how to control them. In our presentation today, I'll review some of the new features and enhancements that we've made inside of Email Security 5.0. And then afterwards, we'll go into a demonstration of the new version. If at any time you have any questions, please feel free to enter them into the chat or the Q&A section, and we will address those towards the end of the presentation. With that, let's begin. One of the main enhancements of Email Security 5.0 is a complete overhaul of the user interface. If you're familiar with version 4, you'll see in the dashboard screenshot here a completely new dashboard layout where we've highlighted the most important details that administrators would like to see when they first log in. This is the look and feel that administrators as well as end users can expect when they log into the web portal and start to navigate around. One of the main objectives of the new user interface was to highlight the most important aspects of Email Security 5.0 and what's going on. What you see here in the screenshot is some of the statistics that you're used to seeing from previous versions, but later on you'll also see several new modules inside the dashboard, such as what you see here in the lower right corner of the message distribution, where we are detailing the different types of email messages that have been sent inbound and outbound through Email Security 5.0. And again, this new look and feel you'll see throughout the entire interface. We've made it much more responsive and easier to navigate, and as well as what I mentioned before, many new features to bring forward to the administrators the different types of threats that are being passed through the email security gateway. One of the other main changes moving into version 5.0 is a new way to classify risks and estimate their risk to the users. In previous versions, we focused primarily on a score from a negative score up to a positive integer. But now what we've done is we've decided to express the risk and spam confidence as a percentage of how risky or the likelihood of being spam is of the message. In this example, we are now saying, instead of classifying messages primarily as not spam, spam, or high spam, we are now using a new feature called indicators to demonstrate or to show what type of threat or what type of classification the email might be. And in this case, we've classified the email as phishing, which we've quarantined, but then we've also specified in the email message how risky we think the message is and what level of spam or what level of confidence we believe that the message might be spam. Again, in this example, we have deemed the message to be very high risk to the recipient, which is partially why it's been quarantined, and also a very high confidence of being spam. And so this is the type of an example of a message that would be quarantined and not passed on to the end user. As I just mentioned, we use a new feature in version 5.0 to better classify or to categorize the types of emails that are flowing through Email Security 5.0. And those are indicators. As you see from this screenshot, and we'll see it live in the demo later, we use indicators inside of the email messages to determine what is the likely classification of this email? And so in this specific email, the indicators inside of the message have helped us classify the message as not only phishing, but also spoofing, bulk email or spam, as well as perhaps a suspicious attachment and an unusual correspondent. And some of these things are coming from different rules and our machine learning and AI engines that we have inside of email security, but also we're utilizing our adaptive trust engine in order to identify who the user may or may not have corresponded with in the past. So you saw a little hint of this on the dashboard screenshot from earlier, but one of the new features which pushes email classifications throughout the entire system is our new threat distribution spider graph, which you can see here. Starting from the left-hand side, this is where you have the clean body attachment rejected and MCP classification. That is the top level graph. And when you drill down into any of those classifications, for example, in the body, you can click on the body link on the left graph, and it will take you into the center screenshot, which shows the different types of messages that we've classified based on the content of the body. And so using the indicators, we and other engines inside of email security, we are able to classify what type of email is coming through based upon indicators inside of the message. So no longer will you just see spam or high spam, but you'll also be able to see if the message was blacklisted, if it was malicious, if there was any phishing indicators, whaling, spoofing, or bulk indicators inside of the message. And we use that to better classify the results of the message, which you can use to better understand how we're classifying, as well as use those indicators in reports so that you can, over time, review the messages that are coming in if you're getting more or less malicious email or phishing attempts throughout the course of time. And so on, you can drill down even further and get more detail about why messages were rejected, which you would see in the or quarantined, which you would see in the right screenshot, attachment blocked, quicksand sanitized, quicksand URI disarm. So these are also further classifications of the different types of threats that we are classifying the emails so that you can understand why messages are being held either in quarantine or being blocked altogether. We've made improvements to the adaptive trust engine, which has been part of Libraesva email security for several versions now. But inside of version 5, in addition to making many enhancements to better understand the history between senders and recipients and sender domains and recipient domains, we're better displaying the history over time. So you can see from the very first time a specific user received an email from a sender, and if they had ever replied to or sent messages back to the original sender. And this history, which you can visualize here, allows us to better determine and understand the likelihood of email coming into a specific recipient and whether or not that message is likely to be spam, malicious, spoofing, etc. And even if a user on the system had never received an email before from someone, if there was communication back and forth between the sender and recipient domains, we can use that information to better understand, even for new senders and new recipients, if the likelihood of that message is to be spam or if it's a legitimate mail. And we use the history of the adaptive trust engine throughout the entire email security in order to better determine what is normal and abnormal behavior for each of the users on the system. One of my favorite aspects of the dashboard is this new quick access to the top 10, and that's the top 10 senders and top 10 recipients. So what we'll see a little bit later when we get into the demonstration is this top 10. And what it does is it lets you quickly see who are the top recipients, and again, the top senders. And this is a very quick way to identify if there's any unusual behavior happening. For example, if you have somebody outside of your domain sending 1,000 messages over the last 24 hours, you would be able to quickly identify that this user is potentially spamming different users on your system, and you can take action. Likewise, you can see if any of your users are the recipient of an unusually high number of emails very quickly from the dashboard and take appropriate action. So this top 10 is available from the dashboard for quick access and quickly identifying visually who might be receiving an unusually or who's sending an unusually high number of messages. I referenced our searching capabilities earlier when I talked about performing searches based on the result of the different types of emails that are coming in. But what we've done in version 5 is we've completely revamped, again, the look and feel and how you are creating and performing searches against the database. We've made it much more simple to use with a easy to edit advanced search capabilities with the additional filters that you see here. Just by adding or removing additional filters, you can get as specific or as general in order to find exactly the type of emails that you're looking for. And with any search, you're able to save them to be able to use later, as well as using that search, you can also have reports generated from any saved search and have that sent to the administrator or the owner of the company, for example, so they can see on a periodic basis all of the results of your matching searches. So for example, if you wanted to create, like we have here, if you wanted to create a search which found all of the phishing emails that came in the last 30 days. These are the filters that you would set up in order to do that. You would get the results and you can save it. Then you can create a report which gets sent on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, and you can specify who gets that. And in each of those reports, the recipient would be able to see, for example, who are the top recipients of phishing emails, or who are the top senders of phishing emails in the last month, or just get a summary report of all of the different aspects of the matching characteristics of this report. So how many were sent, who were the top recipients, top senders, and the trend of those phishing emails over time. So the search has been greatly simplified in order to make it the most useful for administrators moving forward. And now with that, I would like to jump into a live demo of Libraesva Email Security version 5. So here we are in our demo of version 5. As you saw from the earlier screenshot, this is the dashboard. And you can quickly see all of those things that I spoke about before. It's similar to previous versions where we have critical information at the top and then the most recent messages at the bottom. But as I mentioned, we updated the different modules at the top here so you can get the most, you can see the most important information of what's happening on the server. Here again are the top senders and the top recipients that I showed earlier. And for any of these modules here, you can change it from the last 24 hours to the last week or the last month to see the statistics for the given time period. On the right side here, this is the new message distribution chart, which again has a summary of the different types of emails that have relayed through email security in the last 24 hours. But again, you can specify 24 hours, last week, or last month. Here, I'll change that to the last week. And so we have a bigger sample. And now you can click on here. So we have body, again, attachments, and you can click into any of these to see the messages that were classified under each of these different types of categories. So if I click into the body, then we can quickly see how many of those emails that were classified on something inside the body. We can see that all of these, so you had spam messages, high spam, 20 phishing, 2 messages that were classified as whaling, and 1 blacklisted. And so again, if you can click on either any of these, and you can immediately see the results from those messages. So if I click on spam, it will automatically perform a search based on the criteria, and then you can quickly dive into the messages and see what was classified as spam. Similarly, if I click into phishing, it will open a new window and we will get the phishing results. And if I go back and then I click into attachment, then you can also see, okay, all of those messages that were classified based on something inside the attachment, you can see all of them were sanitized by quicksand. And if I click into here again, then it performs a query. Sorry, let me match that last week. Then you'll get the different matching results. Here, actually, that should be quicksand sanitized. Okay, here. You can see all the results of the attachments or the emails that we categorized and as a quicksand sanitized message. So the dashboard makes it very easy to interact with what you see and quickly perform searches. Just like with the message distribution, you can also look at any of these. So for the top senders, for example, if I want to see who are the recipients of these emails from this sender, I can quickly click 40 messages here, and then it will perform a search, and it will show me all the 40 recipients that this sender had sent to. Now I see that the results of all of these emails were clean, so I don't need to be worried that this person is actually spamming all of my users. Perhaps this email address is a sender of a newsletter that all of my recipients are signed up for. So again, we've really updated the dashboard to make it really user-friendly, easily accessible to all of the data that's represented inside of what you see here. Now, if we scroll down a little bit more, you have the familiar message listing. And with each of these, just like you did in the past, you can click one of the links here in order to go into the message detail. And as I highlighted before, we eliminated the focus on the score. Again, you used to see a score of anything from a negative integer to a positive integer based on the different criteria that the message or the different criteria that the message had. But now what we've done is we've brought that into a more meaningful representation. So now we are displaying the risk confidence. So do we believe this message actually poses any risk to the recipient? And do we believe that this message is spam? And so spam and risk don't necessarily go hand in hand. A message can be very spammy, but pose very little risk. And in the inverse, a message can be very unlikely to be spam, but pose a very high risk. And so in that case, we may not be calling it or classifying it as spam anymore, but instead classifying it as phishing, spoofing, malicious, etc. And in this case, again, you can see the outcome of the of what we've done. So we did not relay this message to the recipient. It was quarantined and will show up in the user's quarantine report. Just like before in the information, you can see all of the previous data that you could see before, the different authentication like SPF, DKIM, and DMARC. We've hidden the headers, and so now you can click into it. So we cleaned up the interface here, but you can still see all of the headers. Here again, under the adaptive trust engine, if there are messages, you can see, so this sender and recipient have a very short message history, and there has been no replies. So the recipient has never replied to the sender. So 101 messages have been received, but 0 messages have been sent. And so the adaptive trust engine will understand this as a one-way relationship and not a two-way relationship or a bidirectional relationship. So our trust of this relationship would not be as high as if there was a two-way relationship with messages being sent and received in both directions. Under security analysis, this is where you would see the indicators that we spoke about before. Now, again, this is a relatively harmless email, so the indicators only flagged it as bulk. But beneath that, you can see all of the different checks that we're performing for dangerous or malicious content, as well as spam content. You'll see here that we haven't completely eliminated the spam score. It's still a component of how we classify the different messages that are coming in, but it's not the focus as it was before. And if you did like to look at all of the different rules that were triggered in the past, you can still see those and review them if necessary. Moving on, I'll close these windows here. We can go into the search, which I spoke about earlier. So now the search, again, we've simplified it and made it much more user-friendly, but no less powerful than it was before. By going into search, you can enter a very basic search function just by subject or email address. Choose a time frame. And if you want to perform the search against all messages, SMTP rejects, etc. We had consolidated this from 2 or multiple different search areas in the past. So again, all of that searching can take place here, whereas before, SMTP searches had to be performed in a different location. So now you can do that all in one location. And as I mentioned, one of the nice things, and I think a lot of people are interested in this, is to search based upon the result of the message, or what kind of message do we classify this as. So now when you add a new filter, you can scroll down and select result equals, and then we can choose one of the different types of classifications that we might classify a message. And so if we go down here, you can see all of the different classification or the results on the attachment, the results of the body, the results of our data loss protection. And so you can choose something, for example, if we choose the quicksand sanitized, and we do that from last week, we can perform that search. And we have the results. And then one of the things I mentioned before is that we can save the search. And we do this if either we want to quickly access the search in the future, or if we want to use it in reports that are emailed to an administrator or anyone else that's interested in seeing these periodic reports. So if I save it, I give it a name, quicksand sanitized last week, save it. And now it will show up under my saved searches. And you can perform the search at any time. Or you can go into the report section, choose the search. Here's the one we just created, quicksand sanitized last week. And you can look at the different types of reports available against that data in the search. So if we want to see who were the top recipients of sanitized or quicksand sanitized messages in the last week, we can choose that. Okay, we have here only one email address of those recipients, but if you had more, let's choose a different one. Here's phishing, and then we generate that report again. You can see here that we had many recipients. These are the top recipients by the quantity of phishing emails. So you can see from the most to the least who received phishing type emails in the last week. Now, if you're interested in getting this on a periodic basis, you would click the schedule tab, and then you would add the schedule. And again, if you wanted that report, then you could do that, top recipients by quantity for the phishing search, or if you just wanted a summary report. So there are a variety of reports that you can choose from here based upon the data that's inside of your saved search. But once you do that, you can deliver it to whoever needs to receive it, how frequently they should receive it. So let's do it every week on Monday, and we can save it. And as simple as that, now the admin is receiving a weekly phishing report for all the phishing activity in the last week. So those are the highlights of version 5. And now at this time, I will go back and review if there are any questions. If you have any questions about version 5, please feel free to ask them now. Okay, one question. Is version 5 available, and how can I get it? Yes, version 5 is available. We released it a couple weeks ago, and all you would need to do is go to our website at docs.libraesva.com, and from there we have our download section. And when you go into the download section, you'll see the new version 5. If you are using Libraesva email security in our cloud, we will be rolling out the updates over the next few months. The update is a major update, so it will take some time, and we would just like to make sure that the updates go without any problems. So we will be deploying it slowly over the next few months. Okay. If there are any other questions, please feel free to raise them in the chat. One of the questions is, does it require a new virtual machine? So yes, if you are hosting this yourself, yes, you will have to build a new virtual machine. We have several steps that you perform, and those are documented for you. And what those steps do is that after you've created your new virtual machine with version 5, is in the old machine, it will export all of your settings and historical data so that you can import that into the new virtual machine and have all of the rules and machine learning that would have been developed over time, so that you don't have any loss of performance or rules or history with the new version 5. Another question of, does the update have to be done immediately or can we wait? You can wait. There is, at this moment, there is no timeline for when you must update to version 5. But at some point in the future, I cannot say when at this point, but at some point in the future, we will begin to no longer support a version 4, and version 5 will be the primarily supported version. But at this moment, there is no requirement or urgency to update it immediately. Okay, there is another question of, if I have a cluster, how can I update it? The cluster would be updated similar to how you would have created in the past. I do recommend working with our technical team in order to perform the cluster configuration and migration of data. But you would create a cluster in version 5 as you would have in version 4, and then migrate the settings to one of the nodes in the cluster, and then let the settings propagate to both nodes inside the cluster. So again, it wouldn't be an update of the existing cluster. You would create a new cluster with new virtual machines and migrate the settings to the new cluster. One new question is the Azure Marketplace hosting the version 5.0 release? What about the Azure upgrade process? I will have to follow up with you on that, but I do not believe we've updated the Azure Marketplace yet to version 5. But let me follow up on that and get back to you with the correct answer. I'm not sure at this point. I haven't heard about the Azure Marketplace machine, so I will look into that and get an accurate response for you. Are there any further questions before we wrap this up? Another question, what about the user portal? The user portal still exists. It's accessible just as it was in previous versions, but it has an updated interface to match the new version 5 interface. But the functionality is more or less identical to what you've had in previous versions. Okay, well, it looks like, oh, here, one more question. Will the upgrade process retain the Microsoft 365 tenant integration? That is another great question. I will have to look into that. I believe it does with the restoring of with the export and restoration of the settings that you perform. Again, as I mentioned, with version 4, you would export the configuration and the historical data, and then you would import that into version 5. But given that there are a lot of integrations and whatnot with 365, I would like to get more information about the steps required in order to make sure there's no breaking of the integration between Libraesva and 365. So another question, I will get clarity on that and get a correct answer to you. Okay, everyone, thank you for joining us today. I appreciate you asking questions and your attention. And if at any point in the future you have more questions, please feel free to contact us at sales@libraesva.com or at your account manager's direct email address or phone number, and we'll be happy to help you. Thanks again, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.